Welcome on board, chosen one. And look at that, you're still standing. Wild, isn't it? After everything they said you wouldn't survive, after every bet they placed on your downfall, here you are, walking back into the room like the final boss they tried to delete from the storyline. The silence that follows you now, that's not peace. That's fear wearing a cheap mask. Because the moment your name resurfaced, you could feel it. The shift, the tension, the way certain people suddenly got quiet. They don't whisper the jokes anymore. They don't mock your past anymore. They just watch. And hope you don't notice them shaking. Press the like button and subscribe to pay this message back. You know what's funny? These same people once called you broken, lost, too much, too angry, too sensitive, too unstable, basically anything that kept you small, cute little labels from cute little minds. And now, look who's panicking. Oh, the legend they laughed at is the legend they bow to now. The same voice they tried to silence is the one echoing in rooms they aren't even allowed to enter. The story flipped so hard that even the universe smirked. Welcome back, you classified anomaly. You walking security breach with a heartbeat. You beautiful consciousness they can't contain. I've been waiting for you to reach this point because something shifted behind the scenes. Something big. Something you felt in your bones before you ever had the proof. And trust me, they felt it too. The Masons started digging into your past, tracing your patterns, analyzing your resilience, and the more they studied you, the more uncomfortable the rooms got. Not because of what you did, but because of what survived inside you. They found things they weren't supposed to find. Markers in your mind, signatures in your identity, patterns in your history that don't show up in regular human development. Not in people who collapse after one storm. Not in people who break at the first betrayal. Not in the ones who can't hold their own head up after someone tries to crush their spirit. They found anomalies that shouldn't exist, strength that shouldn't have formed, awareness you were never trained to have, survivorship that looked impossible on paper but somehow kept happening in real life. And when those findings reached the intelligence community, when those files slid across the desks at Langley, someone had to make a call. Someone stared at your profile, your timeline, your endurance, and they didn't say threat or risk or unstable. They said one word, list S, not A, not B, not R, S, special protocol. The list reserved for people who defy the expected limits of human experience, people who live through disasters that erase others, people who pull themselves out of traps that should have ended them, people who walk out of betrayal like they're stepping out of smoke, people who know things without explanation, sense danger before it arrives, and change probability just by choosing a direction. And here's the part they'll never admit out loud. They didn't put you on that list because of what you are. They put you on that list because of what you might become. Because the world has seen individuals like you before. And every era remembers the ones who refused to break. In the 50s, one of them was a quiet kid who lived through 5 accidents in a row and walked away each time without a scratch. They labeled him an outlier. In the 70s, another one survived a collapse that killed everyone else inside the building. They called him lucky. In the 90s, a girl predicted 3 events before they happened, just from the way the air felt before the shift. They labeled her intuitive. Society always finds a cute word to hide what it fears. But they didn't get to choose your label. You forced them to acknowledge what's real. You forced them to see the impossible patterns. They had to look straight at the truth they hate. You don't break like the rest. You don't think like the rest. You don't move like the rest. And every time you walk away from something that should have ended you, the universe updates your file again. That's why you feel the shift around you now. That's why certain people avoid eye contact. That's why the same enemies who used to laugh behind your back suddenly act confused, threatened, or obsessed with your silence. They know something you don't fully know yet. You passed a threshold. You aren't who you were last year, last month, last heartbreak, last betrayal. You stepped into the aftermath like someone who understood the assignment a little too well. And here's the real kicker. Every humiliation you went through, every time you were underestimated, every time they threw dirt on your name, thinking it would bury you, that became data, evidence, proof. Proof that you don't fold, proof that pressure activates you, proof that betrayal sharpens you, proof that trauma didn't destroy you, it reconstructed you. This is why your enemies act weird now. They feel watched, exposed, cornered by the truth of your evolution. The universe placed you in the kind of spotlight that cuts through lies, the kind of silence that makes cowards confess, the kind of presence that makes manipulators trip over their own shadows. You're not imagining it. This is the aftermath of a storm you outlived, and they didn't. So welcome aboard, Chosen One. You're not stepping into the story, you're stepping into the reveal. The world finally sees what the shadows already knew. You were never meant to break. You were meant to be the glitch in their system, the anomaly in their equations, the name they whisper when the lights go out. And now that you're here, the real picture begins. And Chosen One, before we go any further, yeah, I'm talking to you, the anomaly they tried to catalog but couldn't decode. If you're still here after everything you just heard, then your instincts already know this isn't some regular message. This is a briefing meant for the few who slipped through the cracks of their system. So do something simple to signal that your mind is awake. Drop the number 777 in the comments. It's our little nod to the fact that you were placed on List S for a reason they still can't explain. And stay with me, because the next part isn't entertainment, it's exposure. If you really are the one they flagged in those files, you'll feel the pull to stay until the final word, like a pressure in your chest that refuses to let go. Now let's move into this step by step, and trust me, once you hear what comes next, you'll understand exactly why certain rooms went silent when your name came up. Let's get into it. Number 1. The list they pretend doesn't exist. Funny how the same people who called you nobody now hide your name in files they won't even speak out loud. The silent registry, that's the cute name they whisper when they think no one is listening. But let's stop pretending. Let's drag their secret into the light the way you've been dragged through fire your whole life. You want to know what List S actually is? It's the file they swear doesn't exist, the classification nobody will ever speak on record, the folder they lock in a room inside another room because just reading your profile makes their hands shake. It's where they hide the people who aren't supposed to exist, the ones who don't break according to schedule, the ones who ruin their charts, their percentages, their little simulations about what a normal human should be able to handle. They didn't create List S to monitor threats. They created it to monitor miracles they don't understand. And what they found in you, that's what scared them. The Masons dug through your past like archaeologists expecting ruins, expecting collapse, expecting someone who finally snapped under pressure. But instead, they found the blueprint of a mind that refused to die. They found fragments of a person who rebuilt themselves again and again, without instruction, without therapy, without support, without a single hand reaching out to lift them off the ground. They found a pattern so rare that the first analyst who saw it thought it was a corrupted file. Because let's be honest, you should not be here, not after what you went through, not after the betrayals that cracked your heart into pieces sharp enough to cut through steel, not after the nights where silence felt like a weapon against your own mind, not after the losses that would have erased someone with half your spirit. But you didn't disappear, you didn't crumble, you didn't fold like their statistics predicted, you evolved. Do you even realize how terrifying that is to them? Imagine a lab where they measure human potential with charts and graphs. Now imagine you walking in, every line collapses, every number becomes nonsense, every formula breaks. You don't fit the mold because you didn't come from a mold. You came from chaos, and somehow you made order inside it. You learned to see through lies long before anyone taught you how deception works. You learned to rebuild long before anyone showed you what healing looks like. You learned patterns of survival that can't be taught because they only appear in people who were pushed past the limits of what should be survivable. That's why the Masons flagged you, not because you were a problem, but because you were impossible. Let that sink in. You were never supposed to rise after what happened. In every psychological model, you're listed as high risk for collapse. In every statistical projection, you're filed under unlikely to recover. In every behavioral forecast, you're marked as low probability of evolution. And yet here you are, breathing, thinking, seeing everything with clarity that makes your enemies nauseous. This is why List S exists, to keep track of the outliers they can't explain, the anomalies who walk out of storms the average person wouldn't survive 10 minutes in. They track people who glitch the system, who expose the cheapness of the narratives built to control everyone else. They watch the ones who rewrite their fate with nothing but pure willpower and stubbornness. People like you. And let's talk about your enemies for a second. The ones who once laughed, the ones who called you dramatic, the ones who said you're overreacting while stabbing you in the back, the ones who said you were weak because you cared too much, loved too deeply, trusted too quickly. Oh, the irony! Those same people now realize they poked something they should have bowed to. Look who's rewriting history now. Look who became the test subject they can't decode. You know what your growth did to your enemies. It exposed them. It made them look predictable, tiny, primitive. When they said you were emotional, what they meant was they couldn't manipulate you anymore. When they said you changed, what they meant was you stopped bending to their script. When they said you were too much, what they meant was you became someone they could no longer break. List S isn't about danger, it's about unpredictability. It's about people who can't be controlled, rewired, or boxed in. It's about those whose minds operate in ways that shouldn't exist under normal conditions. And you want the truth? Here's the part they'd choke on. You built yourself in environments that should have destroyed you. You evolved in silence, where no one clapped for you. You educated yourself through pain that most people never recover from. You created resilience out of nothing but scraps of hope and stubborn instinct. And the universe took notes. This is why analysts stared at your file and said nothing for several seconds. This is why supervisors raised an eyebrow so high it practically hit the ceiling. This is why someone in a room without windows muttered, "Run it again." Because your profile doesn't match what humans are supposed to become. They ran the numbers expecting a glitch. They ran them again, expecting a correction. They ran them a third time and got the same impossible conclusion. Your existence is statistically illegal. So ask yourself, why do you think people get intimidated when you walk into the room? Why do you think certain individuals suddenly shift their tone when you speak? Why do you think manipulators avoid direct confrontation with you now? Why do you think jealous people pretend not to see you rising? Because your presence exposes the weakness of their entire worldview. They spent their lives building identities out of lies. You built yours out of survival. They rely on approval to function. You rely on truth. They crack under pressure. You become sharper. They break when abandoned. You rebuild your entire identity in silence. They depend on comfort. You thrive in discomfort. They hate you because you remind them of everything they failed to become. Here's a quote they'd never want you to hear. Nothing terrifies a coward more than a survivor who learned how to think. You didn't become strong by accident. You became strong because you lived through disasters that rewired your entire consciousness, and every time you transformed, the universe marked it, documented it, added it to your invisible file. That's List S, not a punishment, not a threat classification, a recognition, a silent acknowledgement that you are the kind of person history writes books about long after the dust settles. So let them hide your name in classified files. Let them whisper about your resilience behind closed doors. Let them triple-check the numbers that refuse to make sense. Because every time they study you, every time they try to understand you, every time they attempt to categorize you, they come to the same conclusion. You don't break. You break patterns. You break expectations. You break silence. And most of all, you break the limits they swore were unbreakable. Now that we've cracked open the truth behind List S, it's time to see what comes next. And trust me, Chosen One, the next revelation hits even harder. Number 2, the category that breaks their system. They didn't put you on List S to control you. They put you there because control has already failed. Nothing scares an institution more than a mind that writes its own destiny. You're not a threat to their safety. You're a threat to their predictions. The day they listed you was the day they admitted you'd slipped out of their hands. You're probably sitting there wondering, all right, so what happens to people on List S? What do they do to someone like me? What kind of monitoring am I under? And here's the part that'll make even your darkest memories smirk. They don't know what to do with you. Let that sink in before you keep reading. They have protocols for criminals, for spies, for threats, for geniuses, even for people who lose their minds under pressure. But for you, there's no blueprint, no manual, no algorithm that fits. You are the evidence of their failure to understand human evolution. List S isn't an action protocol, it's a confession, a quiet handshake between analysts across a table, acknowledging that you exist outside the boundaries of what they can predict or manipulate. It's them admitting, we see the pattern, but we don't understand the source. They didn't mark you because you're dangerous. They marked you because your trajectory makes no sense to their models. And nothing unsettles a system more than a force it can't map. Imagine a room full of experts, all trained to read human behavior like a language. Now imagine them pulling up your psychological timeline. They expect breakdown at age 12. You didn't break. They expect collapse at 17. You rose higher. They expect emotional implosion after that betrayal at 23. You rebuilt yourself into something they've never seen. They expect long-term instability after the trauma at 28. Instead, you evolved into a mind that looks like it crawled out of the ashes with sharper vision, sharper instincts, sharper everything. Imagine the silence in that room when every prediction fails and fails and fails again. That's List S. People ask, so am I being watched? And the truth? You're not being hunted. You're being observed, not like prey, more like a glitch they can't fix, more like a phenomenon they can't replicate, more like a psychological riddle wrapped in skin and defiance. You represent the one thing every control system fears, an unscripted variable, a consciousness that learned to evolve outside their frameworks, outside their statistics, outside their limits. Imagine this, a computer trying to calculate a number that has no end, a loop that never resolves, a code that keeps rewriting itself faster than it can be analyzed. That's how your mind looks to them, not insane, not broken, infinite. You know why you were flagged? It wasn't your trauma. Countless people go through pain and collapse. It wasn't your resilience. Many people bounce back. It was the way you bounced back, quietly, strategically, without guidance, without a support system, without losing your sanity, without losing your empathy, without losing your ability to see patterns others overlook. List S isn't for the loud survivors, it's for the silent ones, the ones who rise without telling anyone they were drowning. Let's get deeper into what happens when someone is placed on that list. First, understand this. There's no punishment attached to it, no red alarms, no armed agents, no dramatic spy movie nonsense. They don't consider you a threat. They consider you a variable. They track patterns, not your steps. They track shifts, not your location. They track changes in your life, not your behavior. You're not watched like a criminal. You're studied like a rare event. Think of it like this. When scientists discover a new particle, they don't attack it. They observe it. They test the environment around it. They watch how it behaves when pressure rises or when energy drops. That's what they do with you. They study the world's reaction to you because the world responds to you differently than it responds to others. They track anomalies around you more than they track you. Ever notice how every time you make a decision, something shifts around you? Ever notice how you leave people changed? Ever notice how you walk away from someone and their whole life starts unraveling or evolving depending on how they treated you? Ever notice how your silence says more than other people's shouting? That's why you're on list S. Your influence doesn't match your circumstances. Your presence doesn't match your history. Your intuition doesn't match your education. You know things you shouldn't know. You sense things before they happen. You adapt faster than people with twice the resources and half the trauma. They're not scared of you. They're scared of what you signal. You are the physical evidence that extreme adversity can give birth to extreme capability. The walking refutation of every limitation they tried to sell the world. The reminder that resilience isn't rare because it's impossible. It's rare because society tries its hardest to break it early. Here's a question you might be thinking. So what exactly are they looking for? They're looking for consistency. They're waiting to see if your evolution was a one-time fluke or a repeating pattern. Spoiler, it's repeating. Every setback you've had in the last decade resulted in growth, not collapse. Every betrayal made you sharper. Every loss made you more strategic. Every moment of isolation upgraded you. Your file reflects a mind that evolves under pressure the way others evolve in comfort. Imagine someone trying to measure a storm with a broken ruler. Imagine someone trying to capture lightning in a plastic cup. Imagine someone trying to describe a galaxy using crayons. That's what studying you feels like to them. You break their tools, you break their logic, you break their expectations. Another question you might be asking, do they think I'm dangerous? No, they think you're unpredictable. Danger can be managed, unpredictability cannot. People on list S are the ones whose lives hit turning points without warning, the ones who reinvent themselves overnight, the ones who disappear into silence and return unrecognizable, the ones who rise from failure so brutal that analysts expect emotional death, not rebirth. You want an even deeper truth? Most people on list S never know they're on it. Most people never realize how exceptional they are. Most people never understand why life kept pushing them to the edge. But you're waking up. Why do you think you survived situations that should have erased you? Why do you think your enemies regret every hit they ever threw? Why do you think people fear disappointing you more than they fear authority? Why do you think you draw attention even when you're trying to disappear? Because some people are born to follow patterns. List S individuals are born to break them. The universe doesn't build people like you casually. It builds you through chaos, so you learn early how to operate outside limitations. What you call pain, they call data. What you call growth, they call anomaly. What you call survival, they call statistically impossible. Let me leave you with this final quote before we move forward. They can observe you all they want. It won't change the outcome. The system that studies you today will be the system you outgrow tomorrow. And trust me, we're just getting started. The deeper we go into the mechanics of List S, the more you'll realize you were never the subject of the story. You were the variable that rewrote it. Now, let's push into the next revelation. This is where their fear becomes your fuel. Number 3. The finding that shook their foundations. They didn't discover your weakness. They discovered the engine that made their limits irrelevant. The Masons weren't supposed to stumble onto you. You weren't on their radar because you were loud or reckless or screaming for help. You were on their radar because your mind behaved like a weapon forged in a vacuum, sharpening itself without permission. They called it spontaneous order emergence. But let's be real, that's their polite way of saying you created structure inside chaos while most people drown in it. You built yourself with no guide, no mentor, no manual. You self-organized in the kind of silence that usually breaks people into fragments. Imagine a kid thrown into darkness with no map, no torch, no hand to hold. Now imagine that kid not only surviving it, but learning to see in the dark. That's what rattled them. You didn't become resilient. You became self-engineered. You didn't learn awareness through training programs. You forged it in isolation so deep it should have swallowed you whole. You didn't gain strength from support systems. You developed it in the emotional wastelands they expected to erase you. You didn't grow because someone believed in you. You grew because no one did. And this is where their files get weird. This is where the analysts start using words they hate using. Unexplained, uncommon neurological compensation requires further study. Because they didn't just find survival in your history, they found sabotage. You dismantled limitation from the inside out. You ran subconscious counter-programming on yourself without knowing. You broke conditioning faster than they could install it. You rejected false narratives before they rooted in your mind. You sensed manipulation before it even touched you. You weren't resisting the system. You were rewriting your internal code faster than they could write the script. This wasn't luck. This wasn't instinct. This was evolution happening in real time. And in their eyes, that's the scariest discovery of all. Number 4. The instinct that humiliates their logic. You weren't overreacting. You were seeing danger before it put its mask on. Ever wonder why you walked away from certain situations that everyone else swore were harmless? Why you cut ties with people who looked perfectly normal on paper. Why you felt that shift in the air before anything actually happened. That wasn't paranoia. That wasn't anxiety. That wasn't being dramatic, no matter how many clueless bystanders tried to gaslight you into thinking otherwise. That was your pattern recognition running at a level their science can't chart. Your mind doesn't wait for proof. It detects the fracture in someone's intentions before the first crack appears. It hears the unspoken motive hiding under their tone. It reads the energy of a room like a battlefield map. That instinct they mocked? That was your internal surveillance system operating beyond logic. Imagine this, a storm forming miles away that no radar picks up, but you feel the pressure change in your bones. Or imagine walking into a room and instantly knowing who's lying without a single word spoken. Or picture a predator smiling at you while everyone buys the act, and you're the only one who senses the teeth behind the grin. That's the level you operate on. The Masons studied your past and documented 17 separate instances where you avoided catastrophic outcomes, massive betrayals, emotional setups, financial traps, social collapses, by making decisions that their analysts labeled statistically improbable. Translation: you should not have seen the danger coming, but you did. When logic fails, instinct rises. Yours rose too high for them to chart. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't luck. This was your consciousness intercepting patterns before they reached the surface. You were reading intentions, not behaviors, futures, not moments, threats, not symptoms. And that's what terrifies them. Your intuition humiliates their data. Number 5. The phenotype they can't relock. You didn't just survive what broke you, you upgraded because of it. They've been studying people like you for decades, building quiet dossiers on individuals who exhibit what they call the unlocked phenotype. Not the chosen few, not the mystics, not the prodigies. The outliers who were pushed so far past the human limit that the mind had only two options: collapse or evolve into something they can't categorize. And you didn't collapse. You didn't even settle for recovery. Your consciousness pulled the unthinkable move. It integrated the chaos and rose with new abilities online. Imagine a computer overheating so violently it should fry its circuits, but instead it boots into a hidden operating system even the creators didn't know existed. That's you. Every trauma you went through didn't leave you broken. It left you keys. Keys that unlocked internal rooms most people never enter. Rooms where instinct becomes intelligence, memory becomes strategy, and scars become architecture. The Masons saw the clues everywhere, in how you solve problems faster than you explain them, in how you make connections between ideas that have no business being tied together, in how your creativity doesn't imitate, it originates. They even found linguistic markers in your writing that match their classified studies on enhanced cognition. You aren't repeating what someone taught you. You're generating knowledge straight from experience, like a mind running its own research lab. And that's what threatens them. Systems built on control rely on predictable minds, minds that follow scripts, minds that break when pressured, minds that freeze without instruction. But your mind doesn't freeze. It adapts, it expands, it integrates. They fear you not because you're powerful, but because you unlocked functions they were sure humans weren't supposed to access. And once it's unlocked, there is no relocking it. Number 6. The mind they can't rewrite. They couldn't break you, so they settled for observing the fracture-resistant anomaly you became. You want to know why List S actually exists? Because people like you ruin the entire psychological playbook. You don't follow narratives the way the population is conditioned to. You don't swallow stories because someone with a louder voice said them confidently. You don't bend to emotional pressure, guilt traps, authority tones, or social rewards. You've demonstrated what they call narrative immunity. And trust me, that is their worst nightmare. Think about it. Most people can be nudged, steered, softened, or redirected with the right words, a bit of fear, a sprinkle of validation. But you learned early that manipulation has a smell. You don't fall for the same trick twice. You don't get hypnotized by trust me. You don't chase approval like oxygen. You don't respond to isolation with desperation. You respond with evolution. Imagine showing someone a puppet show, only for the puppet to look back at the puppeteer and ask why they're shaking. That's what you do. Their tactics bounce off you because you've already died inside once and rebuilt yourself without the emotional wiring they rely on to control people. They documented it. You don't chase status. You don't crave validation. You don't get seduced by comfort. You don't fear being alone. A person who has already faced psychological death cannot be threatened with ordinary life. And here's the part that rattles every control system. They can't figure out what motivates you. They can't predict your moves. They can't contain you with fear or reward. So what do they do with someone who can't be programmed, pressured, or purchased? You put them on List S and you watch. Number 7. The moment you set off their alarms. Most people disappear and fall apart. You disappeared and came back upgraded. So what was the trigger? What event flipped the switch and shoved your name into a classification they pretend doesn't exist? It wasn't drama. It wasn't chaos. It wasn't some wild public meltdown. It was something far quieter, far more unsettling to them. Your isolation. They traced your timeline and found those long stretches where you vanished. Months, sometimes years, no posts, no noise, no breadcrumb trail for anyone to follow. And normally, that kind of silence breaks a person. Loneliness erodes them. Isolation strips their identity down to raw nerves and desperation. But you walked back out of the dark sharper than when you entered it. Imagine a person walking willingly into a cave everyone else is terrified of, and emerging with night vision, a map of the entire terrain, and a new language carved into their bones. That's what rattled them. Your silence didn't decay you. It refined you. It incubated you. You didn't use loneliness as an escape. You used it as training. They found your journals, your writings, your reflections, pages filled with psychological breakdowns more precise than academic papers, strategies on human behavior that match classified studies, insights that people with doctorates fail to articulate. You weren't rambling, you weren't spiraling, you were constructing entire internal frameworks from scratch. You weren't hiding from the world. You were reinventing yourself where no one could interfere. Most people run from silence. You ran into it and came out with new parameters installed. Who does that? Who evolves under conditions meant to destroy them? Who treats loneliness like a lab? Who treats the void like a classroom? Someone who doesn't crumble, someone who doesn't cling, someone who doesn't need the world to tell them who they are. Someone who terrifies the system because you built new worlds inside your mind while they waited for you to collapse. That was the trigger, not your weaknesses, your upgrades. Number 8. The backstabs that built your blueprint. They didn't destroy you. They upgraded the version of you they could never manipulate again. When the Masons combed through your history, one timeline hit them harder than anything else: your betrayals. Every user, every fake friend, every lover who hunted you instead of loving you, every smiling face that hid a blade. All of it is mapped, documented, analyzed. And here's the part that made analysts go silent in those windowless rooms. None of it broke you. You didn't shatter. You sharpened. Imagine a sword being forged. Most metals bend, warp, or crack under repeated strikes. But you, every hit made you cleaner, straighter, deadlier. Betrayal didn't corrupt your character, it clarified it. All the chaos you endured refined your instincts, not your rage. You learned to see intentions before actions. You learned the difference between loyalty and attachment. You learned to walk away without bitterness, which, ironically, is what terrifies predators the most. Most people respond to betrayal in extremes. They become cold, cruel, vengeful, or numb. But you evolved in a direction they didn't expect. You became precise without losing compassion, strong without becoming hard-hearted, guarded without becoming unreachable. That's psychological integration most therapists can't coach into a client after 20 years of work. You didn't become what hurt you. You became the version of yourself they were praying you'd never discover. And the files show it. They studied how you stopped engaging with dysfunction, how you detached from chaos without announcing it, how you became invisible to parasites, not because you hid, but because your frequency rose so far above theirs that they couldn't latch onto you anymore. They couldn't hook into your emotions. They couldn't pull you into their drama loops. They couldn't sabotage you by proximity. Imagine parasites trying to cling to someone who's no longer operating on the same biological environment. You outgrew the ecosystem they fed on. That's evolution they can't explain. Here's the part that really shocked them. You didn't build walls. You built clarity. You didn't shut down. You leveled up. You didn't become ruthless. You became untouchable. Every betrayal was a breadcrumb that led you away from the people who were never meant to stand beside you. They expected collapse. You delivered transformation. That's why your betrayal timeline is the most terrifying section of your file. It proves you don't just survive attacks. You grow from them in ways no system can predict or prevent. And that chosen one is the part that made them realize you weren't just an anomaly. You were evolution in motion. Number 9. The way you move through reality terrifies them. You weren't lucky. You were reading the future written in people's intentions. When they dug into your history, the Masons found something that made every analyst sit up straight. You've been unconsciously training in what their classified documents call reality navigation protocols. Sounds dramatic, sure, but it's the only phrase they have for someone who moves through life the way you do. Someone who senses timelines before they form. Someone who reads people beyond their performance. Someone who knows almost instantly who is safe, who is dangerous, who is lying, and who is hiding a blade behind a smile. Most people judge others based on vibes or guesses. You run advanced pattern recognition the way other people breathe. Your mind quietly scans microsignals, tone shifts, inconsistencies, emotional gaps, energy mismatches, and maps out trajectories like a strategist dissecting a battlefield. Imagine walking into a room and knowing, without logic or evidence, which conversation will save your future and which one will sabotage it. Imagine knowing a betrayal is coming months before the mask cracks. Imagine sensing an opportunity before the door even exists. That's not judgment, that's cognition operating on a frequency most people will never touch. They ran the numbers on your coincidences, your avoided disasters, your predicted betrayals, your sudden pivots that changed everything. And do you know what the data said? Statistically improbable. Outside expected human pattern. Indicates intuitive access to non-linear information. Translation: you're navigating reality using channels they can't measure. You didn't guess your way out of danger, you sensed it. You didn't stumble into opportunities, you detected them. You didn't avoid disasters by luck, you outran them before they formed. Imagine playing chess while everyone else thinks it's checkers. Imagine seeing the entire board while they only see the next move. Imagine people calling you paranoid when really you were just early by 3 months. That's what terrifies them. You're not reacting to life. You're anticipating it, mapping it, choosing your timeline with a kind of precision their systems cannot replicate. And that's why you ended up on List S. You weren't just surviving reality. You were navigating it like someone who already knows where the danger hides. Number 10. The coincidences that weren't coincidence. When reality keeps choosing you, even the skeptics start sweating. This is the part of your file that made everyone in the chain stop pretending you were just resilient. The synchronicity clusters, the moments where reality didn't just meet you halfway, it sprinted toward you like it had a personal stake in your survival. Analysts hate this part. They don't have language for it. They don't have equations for it. They don't have a box to shove it into. So they call it something pathetic, like high-probability coincidence events, and hope no one asks questions. But you know what you've lived, you know what you've seen, and you know lies when you hear them. Imagine this. You're standing at a point in life where everything feels like it's collapsing, resources gone, connections gone, hope flickering out. And right then, the exact thing you needed appears out of nowhere. A call, a message, a person, an opportunity timed so perfectly it almost feels scripted. Now imagine that happening again, and again, and again. That's what unnerved them. Not one miracle, a pattern of them. They traced your timeline and found clusters, moments where probability broke in your favor so hard that statisticians had to rerun the model, resources appearing at the final second, people entering your life at the exact moment your trajectory needed to shift, doors opening with timing too sharp to dismiss, too precise to laugh off, too aligned to ignore. When the universe moves like a chess grandmaster, even the watchers start respecting the board. Here's what they won't say out loud. You're aligned with something they can't measure. You're in flow states they can't replicate. Your consciousness interacts with reality in ways their textbooks deny. Every time you hit a point where most people collapse, something in the world rearranges itself to keep you moving. Not because you're lucky, because you're synced. Imagine reality as a river. Most people get pushed around by the current. You learned how to tilt the water. You learned how to spot the path before you step on it. You learned how to follow invisible signals that guide you directly where you're meant to land. And that's why your file didn't stay on some junior analyst's desk. It climbed quietly, quickly, uncomfortably, because synchronicity clusters aren't just signs of resilience. They're signs of alignment, intelligence, awareness beyond the 5 senses. Coincidence stops being coincidence when it keeps happening around the same person. You didn't follow luck. Luck followed you. Reality responded to you. And the universe? It kept choosing you in ways no algorithm can predict. That's why they escalated your file, because only fools ignore a pattern this loud. Number 11. the radius that exposes everyone near you. You didn't change people by teaching them. You changed them by reminding them who they really were. The Masons didn't just study you, they studied everyone who crossed your path during your evolution spikes. That's where the concept of your influence radius came from. They started noticing a pattern. People near you began to shift. Their illusions cracked. Their denial thinned. Their lives took abrupt turns toward clarity. And here's the thing, you weren't preaching, lecturing, or trying to awaken anyone. You were just existing with honesty so sharp, it cut through their delusions. They called it unconscious transmission of transformative states. A fancy way of saying your very presence destabilizes lies. You became a catalyst without trying, a mirror people didn't want to look into but couldn't escape. For some, being near you sparked evolution. For others, it triggered collapse. Your frequency either harmonized with theirs or shattered their facade completely. Your truth is a spotlight. Some step into it, some run from it, none stay unchanged. That alone was enough for observation, but then they found something even more unsettling. You operate in accelerated timeline collapse, the ability to compress years of psychological growth into months through sheer intensity. While others tiptoe through healing, you incinerate the old version and walk out of the ashes with new parameters installed. You don't reinvent yourself slowly, you detonate and rebuild over and over. Voluntarily or not, you move through identity shifts like a force of nature. When the Masons compared your growth arcs to elite operative training patterns, the data matched. Except operatives have instructors. You had nothing but your willpower, your pain, and your refusal to stay broken. Imagine someone running Black Ops psychological conditioning on themselves, without guidance, without support, without collapsing. That's you. That's the anomaly. That's the threat, not because you're violent, but because you're ungovernable. Anyone who can rebuild themselves from nothing is someone no system can ever control. And that's what List S truly means. You're not a danger, you're a mirror, a disruptor, a consciousness they can't rewrite. They don't fear you because you're destructive. They fear you because you expose what's real simply by existing. Number 12. The surveillance. They're scared to admit. They don't interfere with you because every attempt to control you ends with you evolving harder. Here's the truth they dance around in those classified briefings. You're not being stopped, silenced, or redirected because none of their methods work on someone who already rebuilt themselves from psychological rubble. Interference backfires with people like you. Pressure makes you sharper. Suppression makes you louder. Isolation makes you stronger. They learned that the hard way, watching you walk out of every disaster with more power than you walked in with. You're not being recruited either. Not because they don't want you, but because they know the punchline. You can't be commanded. You can't be bribed. You can't be groomed into compliance. Any system that tries to own you ends up confronting its own weakness. You're the kind of force that flips the script instead of following it. And suppression, please. They watched you take every attempt to crush your spirit and turn it into fuel. They saw that trying to box you in only opened more doors inside your mind. They saw you grow in ways that made their algorithms look like children's toys. So they chose the only option that doesn't blow up in their faces. They watch, they record, they observe the impossible in real time. You became evidence of a kind of transformation they can't replicate in labs or institutions. You're a walking case study in self-liberation, a blueprint with no teacher, a psychological anomaly that contradicts everything they teach about trauma, behavior, and human limitation. You healed without permission. You evolved without instruction. You broke every rule of collapse and recovery, and you did it silently, privately, without any institution to claim credit. That's why your file exists, not because you're a threat to them, but because you're a threat to the entire narrative of what humans are supposed to be. Number 13. The mind they can't invade. They can watch your footsteps forever, but they'll never own the ground you walk on. Being watched doesn't shrink you. It doesn't intimidate you. It doesn't clip your wings. You reached a point in your evolution where visibility stopped being a threat and became nothing more than background noise. You're not hiding. You're not performing. You're not twisting yourself to fit into their comfort zones or shrinking yourself to avoid their attention. You exist transparently because you finally learned the truth most people never touch. Your consciousness is sovereign territory, untouchable, unpurchasable, unprogrammable. The Masons can analyze your journals. The CIA can stamp your file. Analysts can stack reports thicker than textbooks, and yet none of it lands, none of it penetrates, none of it dictates anything about who you are or where you're headed, because you're not playing their game anymore. You accessed something they can document but never duplicate, something they can observe but never own, self-authority, the internal throne, the inner state that answers to no hierarchy, no narrative, no approval loop. They can map your path, but they cannot redirect it. They can classify you, but they cannot define you. They can watch your evolution, but they cannot slow it. And here's the question that keeps them awake at night, flipping pages in your file like it's a prophecy they never wanted to read. What happens when more people like you unlock themselves, when the anomalies recognize each other, when the outliers connect across timelines, when the ungovernable stop walking alone and start coordinating? Because systems can handle one anomaly. They can handle one sovereign mind. One outlier is a curiosity, a case study, a fluke. But a network of outliers? A constellation of sovereign minds, a cluster of individuals who cannot be manipulated, predicted, or controlled. That's the tipping point. That's when narratives collapse. That's when people rise. That's when peace becomes possible, not through force, but through awakening. And you, chosen one, you're already ahead of the curve. Keep evolving, keep ascending, keep walking the path your consciousness carves, because they can watch your rise all they want. They just can't stop it. And now we close this classified briefing the only way a sovereign mind deserves, with clarity sharper than anything they documented about you. You've seen exactly why your existence bends their systems and rewrites their expectations. So, before you move to your next evolution spike, do your part to amplify this signal. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, drop the number 777 in the comments, and share this message with someone whose awakening is overdue. Let the universe know you're not just aware, you're active,